In the year 2000, the future of entertainment walked into a room and asked to be bought. The price was $50 million. Across the table sat Blockbuster, the king of video rental, a company so powerful that Friday night in America almost belonged to it. Thousands of stores, millions of customers, a brand built into the rhythm of family life. And in front of them sat Netflix. Not the streaming empire, not the company that would one day reshape Hollywood, not the platform that would live inside televisions and phones, laptops, and almost every living room on Earth, just a small DVD by mail company, wish a kid with red envelopes, losses, and an idea that looked too weak to fear. Blockbuster looked at Netflix and saw nothing worth buying. Maybe they saw a niche, maybe they saw a joke, maybe they saw a company that could never threaten a giant. But what they did not see was the future. 10 years later, where Blockbuster was bankrupt, Netflix was rising, and the entertainment industry would never be the same again. This is not just a story about video stores. It is not just a story about DVDs or streaming or one company beating another. It is a story about the most dangerous illusion in business, the belief that what made you powerful yesterday will protect you tomorrow. This is Netflix versus Blockbuster, and the $50 million decision that changed everything. Before Blockbuster became a warning, it was a ritual. For millions of people, the weekend did not begin with a button. It did not begin with an app. It did not begin with a recommendation algorithm, quietly deciding what they should watch next. It began in a car on a Friday night, driving through suburban streets, past restaurants, gas stations, and glowing signs toward a blue and yellow store filled with movies. Blockbuster was not just a place to rent a film. It was part of the rhythm of American life. Families walked through its doors. After dinner, teenagers wandered between the shelves, looking for something scary, something funny, something new. Parents stood in line, holding plastic cases, while children argued over cartoons, action movies, or the same film they had already watched 5 times. The store itself became the experience. The bright lights, the walls of movie covers, the smell of plastic cases, the sound of discs being scanned, the small thrill of finding the last copy of a movie before someone else took it. In a world before streaming, choice had a physical shape. It had aisles, it had shelves, it had return dates. And Blockbuster owned that world. At its peak, Blockbuster had thousands of stores, tens of millions of customers, a name almost everyone recognized. It stood between Hollywood and the living room. Movie studios needed it, customers trusted it, competitors feared it, and every weekend people came back, again and again and again. This was the power of Blockbuster, not just inventory, not just real estate, not just a logo on a storefront. Its true power was habit. The company had become woven into a weekly ritual, and when a business becomes a habit, it can feel almost impossible to replace. That was the illusion. Because beneath the bright lights, beneath the busy stores, beneath the feeling of control, Blockbuster's strength was slowly becoming its weakness. Every store had to be rented, every shelf had to be filled, every disc had to be bought, tracked, returned, and replaced. Every customer had to drive there, choose there, pay there, and come back again before the deadline. The system worked because people had no better option. But hidden inside that system was a quiet frustration. The movie you wanted might be gone, the line might be long, the return date might be missed, and the late fee could turn a simple movie night into a small punishment. For years, that frustration did not destroy Blockbuster. It paid Blockbuster. Late fees were not a bug in the model. They were part of the machine. A machine so profitable, so familiar, so dominant, that it became difficult to imagine a world without it. And that is what made Blockbuster dangerous to itself. Because the company did not just believe it had stores, it believed it had the customer. It did not just believe it rented movies, it believed it owned the weekend. But habits are not loyalty. Convenience is not tradition, and a customer who returns every Friday may not be in love with your business. They may simply be waiting for someone to remove the inconvenience. In the late 1990s, that someone arrived. Not with thousands of stores, not with a famous brand, not with a cultural empire, but with a website, a warehouse, a mailing system, and a red envelope to Blockbuster. It looked small, but to the customer, it offered something Blockbuster never truly understood: relief, no driving, no shelves, no waiting for the last copy, no bright store, no return line, and eventually, no late fees. Netflix was not attacking Blockbuster where it looked strongest. It was attacking the friction that Blockbuster had taught customers to accept. And that was the first crack in the empire, because the future does not always begin by looking more powerful than the past. Sometimes it begins by removing one small pain. The old empire thought people would tolerate forever. Netflix did not look like the future, not at first. It did not have the power of a national brand. It did not have the comfort of crowded stores. It did not have thousands of glowing signs on roads, in suburbs, outside shopping centers, waiting for families on a Friday night. Netflix was almost the opposite. It was quiet. It was small. It lived on a website, in a warehouse, inside a mailing system, and inside a red envelope. To understand why Blockbuster underestimated Netflix, you have to understand what Netflix looked like at the beginning. It was not a streaming company. It was not a Hollywood studio. It was not producing global hits. It was not changing television yet. It was renting DVDs through the mail. A customer would go online, choose a movie, wait for it to arrive, watch it, put it back into an envelope and mail it back, compared to walking into a Blockbuster store. This sounded slow, it sounded strange, it sounded like a niche idea for people who were comfortable using the internet before the internet had fully entered everyday life. To Blockbuster, this was easy to dismiss, because Blockbuster's world was physical. You could see it, you could count it, you could drive past it, you could walk inside it, you could measure the shelves, the inventory, the foot traffic, the late fees, the stores. Netflix was harder to see. It was a behavior shift disguised as a small business. And that is what made it dangerous, because Netflix was not simply asking, how do we rent movies without stores? It was asking a much deeper question. Why should the customer have to go to the store at all? That question was the beginning of the crack. Blockbuster made the customer move. Netflix made the movie move. Blockbuster made the customer search the shelf. Netflix made the catalog searchable from home. Blockbuster made the customer return by a deadline. Netflix began removing the punishment. Blockbuster built its world around control. Netflix began building its world around convenience. And convenience does not always look revolutionary in the beginning. Sometimes it looks too small, too simple, too boring, too easy to ignore. But convenience changes behavior, slowly at first. Then suddenly, a customer who once drove to a store learns they can choose from home. A customer who once worried about late fees learns they can keep the movie longer. A customer who once accepted frustration learns that frustration was not necessary. That was the uncomfortable idea inside Netflix. It was not only competing with Blockbuster's stores, it was competing with the assumption that customers would keep tolerating inconvenience, because they always had. And this is where old empires often become blind. They look at a new company and ask, is it bigger than us? Is it more profitable than us? Does it have more customers than us? Does it have more stores, more cash, more market share, more power? But the better question is different. What pain is this company removing? What behavior is it changing? What does it understand about the customer that we are refusing to see? In 2000, Netflix was not stronger than Blockbuster. It was not richer. It was not more famous. It was not more trusted. But it understood something dangerous. It understood that the customer did not really want a video store. The customer wanted a movie night The store was just the old path to get there, and once a better path appeared, the ritual could begin to break. That is why Netflix was uncomfortable, not because it was big, but because it made Blockbuster's empire look heavier than it had ever looked before. The stores, the shelves, the lines, the deadlines, the late fees, the entire machine that once made Blockbuster powerful could suddenly be seen in a different way, not as strength, but as friction. And when an empire mistakes friction for loyalty, it becomes vulnerable to anyone who makes life easier. Netflix did not arrive as a giant. It arrived as a question, a small question, a strange question, a question Blockbuster did not want to take seriously. What if the customer never needed the store? The meeting happened in Dallas, inside the headquarters of Blockbuster. The giant Netflix still hoped could save it. For Netflix, this was not a casual conversation. It was not a friendly visit. It was a desperate move from a company running out of time. The dot-com world was collapsing. Investors were nervous. Money was harder to raise. And Netflix, for all its ambition, was still losing money. It had an idea, it had a website, it had red envelopes, it had customers who liked the convenience, but it did not yet have certainty. Blockbuster had what Netflix did not: scale, brand recognition, cash flow, a national footprint, millions of customers, and the confidence of a company that believed the world still moved through its doors. So Netflix came with a proposal. Blockbuster could buy Netflix, and Netflix would help build the online future. Blockbuster would keep the stores. The old empire and the new system could become one machine. On paper, it made sense. Blockbuster had the customers, Netflix had the model. Blockbuster had the physical empire, Netflix had the digital direction. Blockbuster had the present, Netflix had a path toward the future. And then the number came. $50 million, that was the price. Not $5 billion, not $50 billion, $50 million, for a company that one day would help redefine entertainment itself. But in that room, in that moment, Netflix did not look like destiny. It looked like risk. It looked like a small company asking a giant to pay real money for an uncertain future. And that is where the psychology of the decision begins, because Blockbuster was not looking at Netflix from the future. It was looking at Netflix from the top of the old world. From that height, Netflix seemed small. From that height, red envelopes seemed weak. From that height, a website seemed less real than thousands of stores. And when a company is winning, it often mistakes size for truth. And Blockbuster could count its stores, it could count its customers, it could count its late fees, it could count the people walking in every Friday night, but it could not count the frustration building inside that habit. It could not count the customer who was tired of driving. It could not count the family annoyed by late fees. It could not count the future behavior, because that behavior had not fully arrived yet. That was the trap. The numbers Blockbuster trusted were numbers from the world that was ending. Netflix was offering a signal from the world that was beginning, but signals are easy to ignore when the old machine is still making money. So Blockbuster looked at Netflix and saw a company too small to fear, too early to matter, too unproven to respect, too strange to buy. Maybe the decision felt rational, maybe it felt disciplined, maybe it felt like protecting the core business from dot-com fantasy, because at the time, Blockbuster was not refusing a giant, it was refusing a question, and questions are much easier to dismiss than threats. The question was simple. What if the customer does not need the store? What if convenience matters more than habit? What if the most valuable part of movie night is not the building, not the shelf, not the late fee, but the ability to watch what you want with less friction? Blockbuster did not answer that question. It laughed at the company asking it, or at least it could not take the question seriously enough. And in business, that is often where empires begin to fall, not with a collapse, not with a scandal, not with one dramatic explosion, but with a meeting where the future is offered at a price and the people in power cannot imagine why they would ever need it. After the meeting, Netflix left without a deal. No acquisition, no rescue, no partnership that would unite the old world with the new. The giant stayed a giant, the small company stayed small, and for a while, nothing seemed to change. Blockbuster still had the stores, still had the customers, still had the weekend, still had the brand. Netflix still had red envelopes, losses, warehouses, and uncertainty. But something had changed, because after that meeting, Netflix no longer needed to convince Blockbuster. It needed to beat it. The rejected company became the challenger. The dismissed idea became the strategy, and the decision Blockbuster thought it could ignore became the moment history would remember. The $50 million decision was not just a missed acquisition, it was a failure of imagination. Blockbuster did not simply reject Netflix, it rejected the possibility that the customer's behavior was changing faster than the empire was willing to admit. And that is why this moment matters, because the future rarely arrives. It's with proof strong enough to satisfy the people invested in the past. It arrives as a weak signal, a strange model, a small company, a proposal that sounds too expensive, a question that sounds almost insulting, until one day the signal becomes the system, the model becomes the market, the small company becomes the empire, and the giant becomes a case study. After the meeting in Dallas, Blockbuster still looked strong. The stores were still open, the lights were still bright, the shelves were still full. Customers still came in on Friday nights, looking for something to watch. From the outside, nothing seemed broken. And that is what made the danger harder to see, because Blockbuster was not collapsing yet. It was operating, it was earning, it was familiar, it was still part of the culture. But inside the machine, the same model that had built the empire was becoming the thing that trapped it. Blockbuster's business was built on physical presence, stores, shelves, employees, inventory, rent, local markets, return dates, late fees. Every part of the system, it once made sense. The stores gave customers access, the shelves created choice, the brand created trust, the late fees created revenue, the ritual created repetition. But when the world began moving toward convenience, each strength became heavier. A store was not just a store anymore, it was a cost. A shelf was not just a shelf, it was a limit. Inventory was not just selection, it was risk. A return date was not just a rule, it was friction. And a late fee was not just profit, it was resentment. This is one of the cruelest truths in business. The thing that makes you successful can become the thing you are afraid to change. For Blockbuster, late fees were not a small detail, they were part of the engine, a painful experience for the customer, but a profitable line for the company, and that created a conflict. To make the customer happier, Blockbuster would have to damage part of its own model. To remove the frustration, it would have to remove some of the money. To become more like Netflix, it would have to admit that Netflix had understood something first. That is why disruption is rarely just about technology, it is about identity. Blockbuster was not only being asked to change how movies were rented, it was being asked to question what Blockbuster was. Was it a store company? A rental company? A late fee machine? A weekend ritual? Or was it something deeper? A company that helped people watch movies in the easiest way possible? Netflix had a clear answer. Netflix did not care about protecting stores. It did not care about preserving shelves. It did not care about defending a late fee system. It cared about making movie night easier. That made Netflix lighter. It could test. It could adjust. It could move. It could build around the customer's frustration instead of charging for it. Blockbuster had scale, but Netflix had freedom, and freedom matters when the market starts to turn, because the bigger the old system becomes, the harder it becomes to move. Every store becomes a reason to protect stores. Every employee becomes a reason to protect the old structure. Every profitable fee becomes a reason to protect the fee. Every successful year becomes evidence that the system still works. And this is how an empire becomes trapped, not by failure, but by success. Blockbuster's leaders were not looking at empty stores yet. They were looking at a business that still had life, still had customers, still had brand power, still had cash flow. And that made change feel optional. Netflix, on the other hand, had no empire to defend, no thousands of storefronts, no national ritual to preserve, no late fee addiction to protect. It had to move forward because it had nowhere else to hide. That is why small challenges can be so dangerous. They are not trapped by the architecture of yesterday. They can build for tomorrow while the giant is still negotiating with its past. Blockbuster did try to respond. It experimented. It launched online services. It tried to compete. It saw pieces of the threat. But by then, the company was fighting two battles at once. One battle was against Netflix. The other was against itself, against its stores, against its debt, against its old incentives, against the belief that the customer would always return because the customer always had, but the customer was changing. Slowly, then quickly. The idea of driving to a store began to feel less necessary. The idea of paying late fees began to feel less acceptable. The idea of waiting for availability began to feel outdated. And once customers experience less friction and they rarely ask for more of it, this was the shift Blockbuster could not control. Netflix did not need to destroy the love of movies, it only needed to destroy the need for the store. And once the store was no longer necessary, Blockbuster's greatest asset became its greatest weight. The empire had been built for a world where access was physical, but the future was moving toward a world where access would become invisible. No trip, no shelf, no deadline, no penalty, just the movie, closer to the customer than the store could ever be. That was the deeper battle, not DVD versus VHS, not mail versus retail, not even Netflix versus Blockbuster. It was friction versus convenience, weight versus speed, the old model versus the new behavior. And in that battle, Blockbuster's power became a prison because every time the company looked at its stores, it saw strength, but the customer increasingly saw effort. Every time Blockbuster looked at late fees, it saw revenue, but the customer saw punishment. Every time Blockbuster looked at its history, it saw proof, but Netflix saw vulnerability. The tragedy of Blockbuster is not that it never saw the future coming, it is that by the time it tried to move, it had too much past attached to it. Too many stores, too many costs, too many assumptions, too many reasons to protect what had already worked. And that is the moment when a business model becomes a trap. Not when it stops making money, but when it keeps making just enough money to make change feel unnecessary. Blockbuster was not defeated in one meeting. It was not destroyed by one red envelope. It was weakened by every moment. It treated customer frustration as part of the business, and Netflix understood the opposite, the company that removes frustration. See, it does not always look powerful at first, but it becomes powerful when customers realize they no longer have to tolerate the old way. For a while, the old world and the new world existed side by side. Blockbuster still had its stores, Netflix still had its envelopes, families still walked through aisles, choosing movies by cover art, customers still drove across town, returned discs, paid fees, and followed the old ritual. But beneath the surface, the direction of history had already changed. The customer was learning a new expectation: less driving, less waiting, less punishment, more control, more choice, more convenience. And once expectations change, industries rarely go back. Blockbuster tried to adapt. It launched online services, it removed late fees, it pushed into new models, it tried to compete with Netflix on Netflix's battlefield. But by then, the company was no longer moving from strength, it was moving from pressure. And there is a difference. When you move early, you can choose the future. When you move late, the future chooses for you. Blockbuster was now fighting a war with the weight of its own empire on its back. Stores that once looked like power became expensive obligations. A brand that once meant convenience began to feel like the past. A model that once created loyalty began to feel slow, heavy, and outdated. Meanwhile, Netflix kept moving. from DVDs by mail toward streaming, from red envelopes toward our instant access, from renting movies toward reshaping how the world watched entertainment. The same question that Blockbuster failed to answer in 2000 kept growing louder. What if the customer does not need the store? Then another question followed. What if the customer does not need the disc? And then another. What if entertainment does not need to wait at all? That was the real evolution. Netflix was never only about DVDs. DVDs were the bridge. The red envelope was not the destination, it was the transition. The deeper idea was access without friction. And once internet speeds improved, once devices became smarter, once streaming became possible, Netflix was already pointed in the right direction. Blockbuster was not. It was still tied to a world where entertainment had a location, a building, a shelf, a return slot, a deadline. Netflix was moving toward a world where entertainment would become invisible, on demand, on screen, at home, anywhere, and eventually everywhere. In 2010, Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy. A company that once seemed woven into American culture collapsed under debt, competition, and a future it had failed to fully accept. The blue and yellow stores with a once-owned Friday night began to disappear. One by one, the shelves emptied, the lights went out, the ritual ended, and the company that had once laughed at a $50 million offer became a warning, not because it lacked customers, not because it lacked brand recognition, not because it lacked history, but because it could not let go of the system that had made it powerful. Netflix became something very different, not just a rental company, not just a website, not just a clever alternative to late fees. It became a new gatekeeper of entertainment, a company that changed how people watched movies, how studios thought about distribution, how television seasons were released, how audiences expected stories to arrive. The future Blockbuster rejected did not remain small, it became the world. And that is why this story matters. Because the lesson is not simply buy the startup. The lesson is deeper. Do not judge the future only by how weak it looks today. Do not measure a new behavior only with the numbers of an old system. Do not assume the customer loves your business just because the customer keeps using it. Sometimes people are not loyal, they are stuck. Sometimes your strongest revenue stream is built on their frustration. Sometimes the thing that looks like tradition is only inconvenience waiting to be removed. Blockbuster thought it owned movie night, but Netflix understood something more important. The customer did not belong to the store. The customer belonged to convenience, and once convenience found a better form, the empire had no natural right to survive. This is the danger of success. Success creates evidence, evidence creates confidence, confidence creates blindness, and blindness makes the future look smaller than it really is. In 2000, Netflix looked small, Blockbuster looked unstoppable, but history does not reward the company that looks strongest in the present. It rewards the company that understands where behavior is going next. The $50 million decision changed everything because it revealed the difference between protecting a business or understanding a customer. Blockbuster protected the business, Netflix understood the customer, and in the end, that was the only difference that mattered. So the question is not only, why did Blockbuster fail? The question is, what did Blockbuster teach us? It taught us that the future can walk into the room looking weak, looking strange, looking unprofitable, looking too small to respect, and it taught us that the most dangerous moment is not when an empire is losing. It is when an empire is winning and believes that winning will last forever. Because sometimes the decision that changes everything does not feel dramatic when it happens. It feels reasonable. It feels safe. It feels like protecting what works. Until years later, when the stores are empty, the lights are off, the customers are gone, and the small company you ignored has become the world you now live in. This was Netflix versus Blockbuster. The future offered for $50 million. The empire that could not see it, and the decision that changed everything. If this story made you think differently about business, about success, or about the dangers of protecting the past, thank you for watching. Subscribe to The Pivot Point for more stories about the single decisions that changed companies, industries, and history itself. Until the next Pivot Point.